This is a demonstration of exercises S41 through S44. The problems give us the adjusted trial balance for Dalton Hairstylists as of December 31st, 2018. The first exercise, S41, states prepare Dalton's income statement for the year ended December 31st, 2018. So I have the accounts already listed for the income statement, and we're going to get the balances from the adjusted trial balance that we were given in the beginning of the problem. We start out on our income statement with our revenue account, and that is we only have service revenue. So we have $13,800 in service revenue. Now we're going to list our expenses, and these will be in descending order. So we start out with rent expense, $3,900, interest expense, $2,300, depreciation expense, equipment, $2,200, and our last one is going to be supplies expense, $850. Then I have the exercise totaling the expenses. Then I have it also subtracting the total expenses from service revenue, and we get a positive number, $4,550. So that means that we had a net income for 2018. S42 states to prepare Dalton's statement of retained earnings for the year ended December 31st, 2018. So we go over to our adjusted trial balance, and normally we would find retained earnings listed after common stock. So that means that for this year we did not have a beginning retained earnings. So we're going to put 0 for retained earnings for January 1st, 2018. So this is probably the first year that this company has been in business. Now notice that the next thing that we need to have is the net income for the year. So we have that information from the income statement that we just prepared. So again, you have to prepare these in a certain order. The income statement has to be prepared first before you can do the statement of retained earnings. So now we're going to list our net income for the year, and we get a subtotal. Next, we're going to subtract any dividends that we have. If we look at the adjusted trial balance, we see we have $1,400 in dividends. So I'm going to list that next. Now I have the statement of retained earnings set up to calculate the retained earnings as of December 31st, 2018 by subtracting this amount. So you can tell that $1,400 from $4,550 is $3,150. We have to have that information before we can do the next part, which is exercise S43, and we're going to prepare a balance sheet in the unclassified account form. So in this situation for the balance sheet, we're going to list our assets on the left, our liabilities and our stockholders' equity will be on the right, and we're not going to categorize these assets or liabilities as short-term, current, or long-term. So we're just going to list, starting with our cash. Our first asset is going to be $1,300. Our next asset is accounts receivable, and I'm just getting this information from the adjusted trial balance. So you just take the balances directly from that. Remember, these have already been adjusted, so we don't have to worry about that portion. We've already updated the accounts. So all you're doing now is you're just putting them into the balance sheet. Our accumulated depreciation will be subtracted from the equipment, and we'll get a net amount. Then I have the spreadsheet set up to total the cash, accounts receivable, office supplies, and the net amount for equipment, and we get total assets of $23,300. Now we're going to start with our liabilities. Accounts payable, $400, interest payable, $500, and then notes payable is $3,100. And we're going to get a subtotal for our total liabilities of $4,000. Then we list our common stock, and we have to have our retained earnings, but remember it's going to be this amount, $3,150 from the statement of retained earnings. And then that gives us a subtotal for stockholders' equity. And then when we add liabilities to that subtotal, we get total liabilities and stockholders' equity of $23,300. That equals our total assets, and we know that our records are in balance. Now, S44, we're going to prepare a balance sheet again, but this time we're going to do it using the classified and report form. So the difference is when you do the classified, you're going to separate your assets into current assets and property, plant, and equipment in this problem, and we're also going to separate our liabilities into current liabilities and long-term liabilities. The other difference is whereas in the account form we list assets on one side, liabilities and stockholders' equity on the other side, in the report form everything is listed one after the other, so it's in a up and down fashion, and then we get subtotals that we compare. So now we're going to complete the balance sheet using the classified and report form. So again, the same information, $1,300 for cash, $1,500 for accounts receivable, and $1,800 for office supplies gives us total current assets of $4,600. And then under property, plant, and equipment, we had the $20,900 for equipment, and then we subtract the accumulated depreciation, and we get a total for our property, plant, and equipment. So now we have a subtotal for current assets, a subtotal for property, plant, and equipment, and then the same total for the assets. Now we're going to do the same thing for our liabilities. We have two current liabilities, accounts payable for $400 and interest payable for $500. So that gives us total current liabilities of $900. And we're going to list our notes payable separately because the problem told us that the note payable was long term. So that will be listed separately, and then we'll have a subtotal for total liabilities of $4,000. Then we'll list again our common stock, $16,150, and our retained earnings that we've got from our statement of retained earnings, and we get a subtotal again for total stockholders' equity, and then total liabilities and stockholders' equity is $23,300, which equals total assets of $23,300. And that is the conclusion of the demonstration for the exercises S4 1 through 4.